President Biden announces new guidelines on the issue of abortion. This comes 100 days after the Supreme Court voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more from the White House.
It's been exactly 100 days since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And the White House on Tuesday tried to highlight the impact of that decision and what it says has been happening since then. Let's take a listen.
The Dobbs decision created a healthcare crisis in America.
We're seeing extremist laws pop up around the country that are having a ripple effect far beyond the health rights of a pregnant woman.
Biden announces $6 million in new grants to expand abortion access. He also rolls out new guidelines from Department of Education telling universities to protect reproductive health care access.
Students need access to health care to thrive in school and in life, and that includes reproductive health care.
But those comments sparked criticism from Republicans, with Congresswoman Mary Miller saying the Biden agenda for young students is castration and abortion. The meeting also comes as the White House seeks to drum up support for Democratic midterm candidates. And here's Biden taking aim at Republicans.
Because Republicans in Congress want to pass a law to take away the right to choose for every woman in every state, in every county.
More than a dozen states have effectively banned abortions following the Supreme Court ruling. But all of such states do provide an exception for when the mother's life is in danger, and many provide exceptions for rape and incest. Biden, meanwhile, calls on Congress to codify Roe and on Americans to vote Democrat.
But right now, we're short a handful of votes. So the only way it's going to happen is if the American people make it happen.
That being said, it is highly unlikely that a Congress would be able to codify Roe. That's because Democrats currently only have a slim majority in the Senate, and the future control of both chambers is still up in the air until November. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
The nation's highest court is wasting no time in its new term. The court has rejected a challenge to Biden's vaccine mandates for healthcare workers. The justices previously allowed the mandate to stand while leaving open the possibility of ruling in favor of the state challengers in the future. And in another high-profile case, SCOTUS has overturned a Massachusetts gun law. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with the details.
In the first ruling of their new term, the Supreme Court Monday reversed a ruling on a Massachusetts gun law that had imposed a lifetime ban on purchasing handguns on anyone convicted of a crime involving a gun.
In these cases, specifically in Massachusetts, many of these are nonviolent misdemeanors. It's not that they committed a crime with a gun, or it's not even that they hurt somebody, and now they're no longer allowed to defend themselves or their family.
The case involved a Massachusetts man who was arrested in 2004 in D.C. for carrying a handgun while entering a museum. 14 years later, he was denied a permit to buy a firearm. The High Court's ruling returns the case to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit for further consideration in light of the Supreme Court's ruling this past June, which recognized a constitutional right to carry guns in public. Have you all noted an increase in the purchase of guns since the Supreme Court has been ruling more pro-Second Amendment?
The past few years in general have led to a huge increase due to COVID, the protests of last year or the year before, and the rise in crime in general has led to a huge increase.
Melina, we know the court is also hearing arguments today on a voting rights case. Plaintiffs aim to get a ruling that would force Alabama to redraw districting maps and to create a second majority black district. What more could you tell us about this case?
Yeah, Steve, so justices heard oral arguments today for about 2 hours looking at the implications of the Voting Rights Act. So what's happening here is that a group of Alabama voters, along with a chapter of the NAACP and another multi-faith organization, want a ruling from the Supreme Court that would force Alabama to redraw their maps, creating a second black majority voting district. Right now, Alabama has 7 voting districts, only one of which has a majority black, has a majority of black voters voters in that district. Plaintiffs argue that the fact that only 1 out of 7 of these districts are majority black, that this actually dilutes the vote in Alabama. But Alabama pushes back, saying that them being forced to redraw maps, creating a second black majority voting district, would be contrary to the Constitution, saying that this would be an example of race-based sorting. So it's unclear when we will see a ruling from the justices on this. They may wait until after the November elections because midterms are coming up so soon in just a couple of weeks. Previously, when the Supreme Court did take up this case and issued that stay back in February, Justice Alito and Justice Kavanaugh did echo this point, saying that they believe it is too close to the election to require Alabama to reinstate a new map. Now, the ruling on this case will have implications that reach further than just Alabama. It's likely to also have implications in Louisiana, for example, where a similar case is unfolding right now. So the ruling on this case will likely reach far beyond just those 2 states. Steve, back to you.
And the Republican Party is putting forth more black and Latino candidates for the upcoming midterms than ever before. And polls indicate fewer black voters are supporting the Democratic Party than they did in 2020. Republicans have nominated 24 black and 30 Hispanic candidates on the ballot for House races, and 5 GOP candidates for the Senate are black or Hispanic. According to polls, the Democrats are still the party of choice for most Latinos and blacks. However, election experts say that marginal inroads may be enough to swing some key seats in the direction of the GOP. CNN is reporting that black support for Democrats is down to 74% compared with 84% in 2020, while support for Republicans is up at 12% from 9% 2 years ago. Among Hispanics, those with roots in the United States are gravitating toward the GOP, as well as many who agree with Republicans on social issues like illegal immigration and abortion. Search and rescue efforts continue in Florida in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. How are residents doing and what challenges are they facing right now? Joining us today is Florida Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart. Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you, sir.
Congressman, the aftermath of the hurricane is setting in as the death toll continues to climb. You represent much of southwestern Miami-Dade County. What's the situation like there?
Miami-Dade County didn't get hit very hard. I also represent parts of Collier County, and there it gets progressively worse. There are some parts, particularly on the coast in the district that I represent, areas like Everglades City, Choccolosky, Plantation Island, they got hit, that were basically businesses and homes underwater unless they were extremely elevated. But I will tell you, for example, the district that Byron Donalds represents, that was hit just incredibly hard. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the death toll go up and some of the strongest damage in the entire country.
So I'm trying to get an idea. What stage would you say things are at? You mentioned Congressman Donalds being in a hard-hit area. Is it still search and rescue, or is it rebuilding?
No, it's still search and rescue, and unfortunately the death toll goes up. Last numbers I've heard is 103 confirmed dead, 99 of those in Florida. By the way, 54 of those are just in Lee County alone. And so I think, unfortunately, that number may creep up a little bit more. We're also seeing some amazing acts of heroism. 42,000 linemen are now currently in the state of Florida responding to folks that don't have power. They've restored power to more than 1.8 million people across the state. And then you have volunteers and religious groups, individuals, organizations that are out there. Look, there's this group called Global Empowerment Mission that's headquartered in my district that have been sending truckload after truckload of food, of water. The General Consul General, I should say, of Israel, he himself took stuff over to Collier and Lee County. So you're seeing these acts of generosity, which is awe-inspiring. But unfortunately, you're also seeing a few people that have gone out there to try to loot. But the governor's been very clear. If you loot in this state, you are going to get hit with the full force of the law. You mentioned the humanitarian effort and, the great people that are supporting
people in Florida right now. With that said, when it gets to the rebuilding stage, sometimes price gouging becomes a concern. Should other honest contractors from neighboring states make their way over to some of these hardest hit areas to help?
Yeah, I mean, this is again, they're still in the search and rescue mode, but and obviously in some areas they are clearing up and cleaning up. There's going to be a lot of assistance, a lot of need for folks in Southwest Florida. I think, unfortunately, for quite a long time. There are communities that are just wiped off the map, literally. There are people that not only have they lost their homes, they've actually lost the land where the home used to sit on. And so, again, there's going to be a lot of need. Florida has been really, really good over the years because we have experience dealing with price gouging, dealing with folks who want to come here to do bad things. But yeah, we are going to need help. And I think, by the way, Steve, that we'll probably need one or two supplemental appropriation bills as time goes by. This is going to be a long, expensive, arduous process. And if I may, that's why it infuriates me when we waste money in Washington on a lot of different things, including, by the way, on feel-good issues dealing with global warming that will do nothing to help the environment, when mitigation is the thing that we should be looking at, strengthening homes, elevating bridges and roads. That works. It costs a fraction of the money we are wasting in the federal government right now.
Congressman, just switching gears a little bit here, 30 Hispanic candidates are on the ballot this year for House races across the country. This has actually set a new record for Republicans. What kind of message is your party sending to Hispanic voters?
The message is very simply, can the American people afford another 2 years of the policy that is destroying this country, that has created record inflation, interest rates keep going up. There's not only food scarcity, but there's also the fact that people can't afford food. Working class, middle class Americans are really struggling. So can we afford this? What this party doing what they wanted to do, can we afford more of this? And so what you're seeing is the American people rejecting the socialist policies that are destroying this country, like they've destroyed every single country, or the state of California, where these sorts of policies have been implemented.
Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, thank you so much.
Good to see you, sir.
Former President Trump is suing CNN for defamation. The suit seeks $475 million in damages. Trump claims that the media company is responsible for a, quote, campaign of libel and slander against him. The lawsuit says that CNN ramped up its attacks in recent months, fearing a 2024 run for former President Trump. It says, quote, as part of its concerted effort to tilt the political balance to the left, CNN has tried to taint the plaintiff with a series of ever more scandalous, false, and defamatory labels of racist, Russian lackey, insurrectionist, and ultimately Hitler. Trump said in a recent statement that he plans to file lawsuits against other major media companies in the coming weeks and months. He also said he's weighing action against the House Select Committee investigating January 6th. There are fewer places to pick up a paycheck in the United States. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics today reported there were 10.1 million job openings last month. That's down more than 1 million available positions compared to July, and the lowest it's been since June of 2021. The most recent job openings and labor turnover survey, known as JOLTS, says there are nearly 1.7 vacancies for every person who is searching for a job. That's also down slightly from July. Analysts say the lean labor market could decrease wages and curb inflation.